This is Chill Bill coming at you live from K-Troll, here to introduce another exciting episode of Skylanders Portalcasters, the podcast discussing anything and everything Skylanders. Over to you, Inklander.
Thanks, Chill Bill. I'm joined today by my co-host GFDitto for this special Christmas episode, which will also act as my last episode as a main co-host of Skylanders Portalcasters, where we will be discussing the in-game collectibles of the Skylanders franchise. So we figured this was going to be fairly fitting when it came to Christmas. So Ditto, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Merry Christmas, Inklander.
Yes, Merry Christmas to you as well, Ditto. Happy holidays to everyone. Hopefully you're having a wonderful holiday season. And we have a very fitting topic, I think, to talk about in this episode.
Absolutely. Extremely fitting for the holiday season.
Exactly, because, what's more capitalistic than gift giving? and having to worry about buying gifts and all the crazy hecticness that can come from Black Friday shopping and all of that kind of stuff like that. So we figured, let's talk about all the collectibles that can be found throughout your journey in Skylands. This is something that we've not really talked about before, but we're going to be diving into everything from story scrolls to wish stones, you name it. We're going to be talking about it in this episode.
Absolutely.
But we're going to try to talk about these kind of roughly in the order that they came out in the games, and then also, I guess, sort of order of importance as well. So we're going to be starting off with Spyro's Adventure and working our way forward up through Imaginators. So starting with Spyro's Adventure, the first collectible that we really want to talk about, because it's really the most important, because it's core to the being of your Skylander, and that's experience points.
Oh yes, immensely important. Experience points are what allows your Skylander to level up and to become more powerful so that you can reach that level 20, or in the case of Spyro's Adventure when it came out, level 10, and maximize those stats so that you can always be doing optimum amounts of damage.
Yeah, absolutely. And it pretty much increases your, as you say, your stats. It increases your health. So it's actually a really, really important piece of the puzzle when it comes to collectibles in Skylanders. And honestly, it's pretty hard to find a game without some sort of experience points these days, unless you're playing like Paper Mario and the Origami King. But
platformers in general, just solid platformers that don't have RPG elements, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah, so experience points really makes the Skylands go round, and it's a really fun collectible. I enjoy it. Obviously, once you have a massive Skylanders army that's all at level 20, experience points pretty much become useless, and in some cases when it comes to the XP stars that get introduced in Trap Team, if you have a level 20 Skylander, you can't collect it. So that's a problem, because all of my Skylanders up through Trap Team are leveled up all the way. I can't collect it. So it just sits there in the Academy hub if I start a new profile. It's quite annoying. I'd have to wipe one of my Skylanders to be able to collect it, which I guess I could, but so that part's a little annoying, but for the most part, XP's fun. It's cool. It's it's a great way to be able to continue to improve your Skylander apart from the upgrade side of it.
That's true.
But speaking of the upgrade side of it, the other really main important collectible that exists alongside XP that also helps you boost up your Skylander, or do a number of other things as well, is gold.
Yes, gold. Gold is the currency of Skylands. You need it for just about everything, whether you're buying hats or legendary treasures in Swap Force, or Sky Stones, or keys for locks, or Sky Stones cheats, or, most importantly, upgrades for your Skylander, because you have general upgrades, then you've got the upgrade paths and a soul gem, and that gets really pricey really quick, and you can't really do anything about that without a bit of gold, which can be found strewn all over Skylands. You break some barrels, defeat some enemies, and you start getting drops that contain gold.
Yeah, gold is definitely really important. Luckily, it's fairly plentiful, more or less. And, it's basically consisted in piles or in small amounts. We can get drops from breakables and things like that in the levels, as Ditto said. But yeah, it's really important because, your primary use for it is going to be to continue to level up your Skylander, well, to be able to upgrade them, to be able to give them new powers, and be able to pick those different paths, get that soul gem. But it's also really important because you can buy numerous things with it throughout all the games.
Exactly.
Well, there's kind of two things I don't like about gold. One thing is, like, the gold saves to your Skylander figure, which does make sense, but I wish in later games they had introduced, like, a Skylander bank. Like, I wish there was a way to be able to transfer your gold from one Skylander to another. I would have appreciated that.
Yes, because there comes a point in the game, if you play long enough, where your favorite Skylander has maxed out at 65,535 gold pieces, and can't pick up any more, but you've already bought everything in the shop and all your upgrades, so then what? That gold just sits there and is inaccessible to anything for anything.
Yep, it's just a trophy, pretty much. Just like, look at this, I play with the Skylander enough to where they have all their upgrades, I've bought everything in the shop, and they still have max gold. That's basically the only purpose it serves.
The only thing you can do from there is buy more Skystones cheats or door lock keys.
Yeah, depending on the game, if the game has those.
Yes.
So, yeah, it definitely can be pretty frustrating. The other thing that got introduced to Trap Team that just kind of, like, annoys me, it's just really a minor thing. I'm sure probably some people enjoy it, but originally, if you encountered a pile of gold, you would just walk into it and collect it. But starting in Trap Team going forward, you would walk into a pile of gold, and you'd collect the majority of it, but different pieces of gold would pop out of that, and then you'd have to go and walk over to the other pieces of gold that, like, moved out of the pile of gold. That's something that, like, I'm not particularly a fan of either. I'm not quite sure why they changed that.
Right, that's kind of annoying.
Yeah, so it's like a really minor thing, but like overall, we like XP, we like gold, and another thing that we like too are treasure chests.
Ah, yes, treasure chests. Usually found 3 to a level in Skylands. They contain a decent amount of gold, and that's pretty much all they do, except on the end screen of each level, you get that little check mark towards the story star if you find all 3 chests.
Yes, that is true. So, they're pretty cool, and I will say that in Superchargers as well, there are the randomized loot treasure chests, and those could give you a hat, they could give you gear bits, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Like, they could give you a wide variety of things, so it's not like it's always necessarily gold. But yeah, for the most part, it's just like, you find one, they're usually in a pretty tricky location. Well, sometimes anyway. Like, they're hidden. And, you find one, and it's just really satisfying to be able to open that up, get some gold. You might be able to get another upgrade for one of your Skylanders due to that, and then just go on your way. It's actually really cool.
And it's kind of fun as well, because in order to open these treasure chests, you usually have to mash a button or shake a controller. And that was just kind of a really cool little addition, as opposed to just running up, pushing a button, and you got it.
Yeah. I would agree with that. And also, like, as you say, there's a good collectability to it as well, because not only are you feeling encouraged to find them due to that level star, to be able to complete the level star, but also, like, you are going out and wanting to seek these out because they are tied to another really important collectible in the game. So it's really fun to kind of go explore and see if you can find more treasure chests. So it is a really, really nice collectible. Now, one other collectible that's really tied to the Skylanders themselves are the Soul Gems, and these Soul Gems are individual collectibles specifically for a Skylander, unless we get to Imaginators where they have, like, the Bow Slinger Soul Gem and things like that, but for the most part, like, they are specific to one particular Skylander, and they give that Skylander, like, a super cool move that you're able to add on to their upgrade path.
Yes, a Soul Gem, not only does it allow for a mid-level commercial for more Skylanders, but it adds a somewhat expensive, but usually over-the-top powerful skill to a Skylander's upgrade tree. And these Soul Gems are definitely invaluable and essential for bringing out the absolute best in any Skylander.
Yes, absolutely. They are really cool. I definitely don't like how they do kind of function as ads. But hey, I guess that's in the Christmas spirit, a bunch of marketing stuff like that. But that part of it's not great. Although it's also good if you happen to encounter a Soul Gem of, say, like a character you've already seen in the store. And you're like, that character looks kind of cool. and then you do end up getting that soul gem and you want to see how they actually play, then that's a great way to do it, is by just watching their little cinematic and then being like, okay, maybe I do want to get that character. So in some ways it is useful, but it is also an ad. But overall, the soul gems themselves are really important when it comes to upgrading the Skylander that you have. And it's a really, really cool way to get a new move for your Skylander. So I do really enjoy the soul gems, but yeah, the commercial side of it's maybe a little over the top. It'd be better if that maybe wasn't tied to the soul gem and you could just like watch those from a menu separately from that.
Next up, contrarily, while the soul gems allow for the Skylanders to increase their upgrade possibilities, we have hats, which increase the stats of your Skylander.
Yeah, so while the soul gem is basically getting your Skylander up to their most epic version of themselves possible with their upgrade tree, the hats basically create modifiers to your Skylander stats. So you might be able to get a hat that'll increase your Skylander's speed, their armor, their attack, maybe a combination of these things, their luck even. So it's actually really cool to be able to find new hats and collect these hats, which in the earlier games they are found by completing elemental gates. But in later games, you might just kind of find them through treasure chests or just various different means, or in Imaginators through a completely different collectible system that we'll be talking about later. But for the most part, yeah, these hats are really cool because they're stat modifiers. They're like a way to find a new way to boost your Skylander that isn't from directly using gold to buy a new upgrade for them.
Unless you buy the hat in the shop.
That is true. Now, we've pretty much talked about all the ways from Spyro's Adventure that you're able to modify your Skylander, but there's still other collectibles that existed in the games, like for instance the story scrolls, which would actually provide more lore and background to the Skylanders universe, which I actually really liked. It was something that was just in the background as like, it's not really relevant to the main story. Well, sometimes it is. It's relevant to the level usually, but like it just gave you a little bit more background, a little bit more insight on the universe that you were in, which was really cool.
And the story scroll would evolve over time. It would go from giving us more insight to the lore behind Skylands, to being a place for Flynn to showcase how awesome he is, to being Chaos's personal diary. And this evolution kind of just expanded upon the lore and the characters in a very unique way that made it super fun.
Yeah, I was very disappointed that story scrolls weren't included in Imaginators, because like I really liked how they were just this kind of like random aside. Like it was very fun to just like get this like a little bit more background on whatever was going on, whether it was like, you know, Flynn's ego or whether it was like Chaos's chaosness. I don't really know however else to describe that. But like it was nice to see that, and when they were narrated by Eon, it was also really good to learn a little bit more about the location we were in, or about, you know, the background behind some of the Skylanders, and about Portal Masters and about the Portal Network. So it was always really enjoyable, which makes me sad that this collectible didn't continue through the entire franchise.
Another collectible that similarly didn't make it through the entire franchise, although in a manner it sort of did, we'll touch on that later, would be the Legendary Treasure.
Yeah, so the legendary treasures are interesting, and we see those evolve throughout all the games. In Spyro's Adventure, they pretty much function as just like a regular collectible, but then in Giants, they function as a way to pretty much customize Flynn's ship, which is interesting. That was an interesting take on that. And then, you know, like we see them evolve over time and change over time, and as Ditto said, we do kind of see them evolve into something else entirely later. But the thing is I don't know, like legendary treasures I'm kind of indifferent to. They're cool, I guess, but it did kind of feel like this was one of those that was a little bit more like padding. Like they didn't really need to have that there, but they did.
I happen to really enjoy them in Giants and Swap Force, where they served actual functionality, as opposed to the other games where they just kind of didn't.
Yeah.
They didn't appear at all in Superchargers, but in Giants, they allowed you to customize the ship, and in Swap Force, you could actually place them on pedestals around the hub, and they would improve your stats, similarly to how a hat would.
Yeah, so I did like that kind of idea, and it works really well, I think. But when it came to, like, Spyro's Adventure, where you're just kind of collecting them, yeah, like,
Trap Team as well. You collected them just to collect them, and they were never seen again.
Yeah, like, that's kind of boring. And, I mean, I think in Trap Team, they would appear as, like, structures around the hub in the academy, but the thing is they wouldn't have any function to them, unlike what would happen in Swap Force or in Giants. You would see them, but, like, the thing is that's it. You just see them. And even then, you don't even think about it. It's like, okay, this thing got added to the academy because you collected this. You'd get a notification about that, and it's like, cool. And then you completely forget about it. So, yeah, the legendary treasure was kind of all over the place, and, I guess it's cool that it was something that you could use to customize Flynn's ship with. It was odd to call it a legendary treasure like that. I think in Giants they could have called it, like, ship parts or something, but whatever. This was definitely a weird collectible that changed a lot over time.
Absolutely. And then we move on to one of my personal favorite collectibles because, well, anybody who's hung around and listened to the podcast long enough knows that I love to save money. So the final collectible introduced in Spyro's Adventure is the Winged Sapphire, which gives you a discount on items in the shop and on Skylander upgrades.
Yes, absolutely. And I like Winged Sapphires. Winged Sapphires, to me, like, when I was originally playing through Giants for the first time, Winged Sapphires were really one of the collectibles I was most concerned about, because if you're trying to get that Soul Gem ability, that's expensive. And being able to have a Winged Sapphire to be able to bring that down drastically by getting continuous, like, 2% discounts here and there as you keep collecting them, they're really important. And they're not, like, as important to, your Skylander as gold itself is, but it's a really important modifier to gold and being able to buy things in the shop that I think makes this a really worthwhile collectible. And it was kind of sad to see them not do that in Imaginators, because in Imaginators a lot of stuff's really pricey, and I think they could have really benefited from Winged Sapphires in that game.
This is very, very true.
So yeah, Winged Sapphires overall a really good collectible. Like, I really thought that one was a good idea. Now, moving on to Skylanders Giants, like, this whole list, all this stuff got introduced in Spyro's Adventure, which makes sense. That's the game that's going to be introducing us to all these mechanics. But going forward, we're going to be talking about the collectibles introduced in Skylanders Giants, and the first one that we're going to be talking about is the Luckatron Wheel that you'd be able to equip in the Dread Yacht.
Yes, the Luckatron Wheel was similar to a legendary treasure. It was an item that was hidden somewhere in each level in Giants, and would only appear in Giants.
Yeah, but it'd be able to give you some sort of boost to, I guess, your Skylanders abilities, kind of similarly in a way to hats.
Yes, only they offered this in the way of different stats most of the time. Usually it would be there to increase your attack damage, your defense, how much money you gained, or how much experience you would gain.
Yeah, so this was actually a pretty good idea. I think they probably ended up doing away with it because hats do serve a kind of similar purpose, because hats can also give you, like, a gold increase as well, as we see in later games. So I think they kind of just took the Luckatron Wheel idea and kind of just merged that into the hat idea. So it's interesting, and it gave you another thing to collect, and it's definitely not a bad idea. I just kind of like what hats did more, and what they did with the legendary treasures in Swap Force a little bit more. So not an awful idea. It's just they ended up just finding a different way to implement the same idea, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing.
So what happened was they ended up taking a blanket boost for the Skylanders between the Luckatron Wheel and the legendary treasures in Swap Force, and decided to incorporate that system into the hats, which isn't a blanket thing, so you could have a little more customization. You could choose, okay, I want this hat for this Skylander, this hat for this one, based on a Skylander's individual needs, as opposed to a blanket thing.
Yeah. And while, I mean, maybe some people would prefer the blanket thing because it's just like, yes, overall, I want my Skylanders to be able to collect more gold. Maybe that is what someone would be a little bit more concerned with. And if that's the case, true, sure, that makes sense. But also, like, I do kind of prefer the more individual side of customization, because then I'm able to, if I wanted to, customize every single Skylander to be able to have a different boost based on how I feel I would want that Skylander to play.
That makes perfect sense. There's pros and cons to both methods.
Yes, absolutely. But overall, I do really kind of like the individual method a little bit more. So the Luckatron Wheel, I think it makes sense. I just found a different way to distribute that in the later games. But that's not the only collectible that got introduced in Giants. The other major one that I think a lot of people think about more prominently when it comes to Giants, and also from the franchise moving forward, is Skystones.
Yes, Skystones, as we talked about in a previous episode, are necessary to play the game Skystones in its many variations. And in the games that allowed you to customize your deck, you would go out and you would collect various different stones in order to have the options you want, in order to customize your deck to be what you want it to be.
Yeah, and I think this was a really cool idea because we saw them kind of wanting to do this with the pirate cards in Spyro's Adventure. And so they brought back that idea of having an in-game card game, but in a really cool and really fun way, as we've talked about in the Skystones episode previously. But yeah, it's a cool idea, and the fact that you're able to customize your deck, and the more people you play against, and you're also able to buy them in the store too, like there's a wide variety of ways to get Skystones, and you're able to just keep building your deck, keep building up that customization, and I really like that. I think it's a really fun mechanic and a really clever idea. Granted, again, as we talk about in the Skystones episode, do I think they should have made that required, like Toys for Bob like to do in Giants and Trap Team? I think also in Imaginators as well. Yeah, they definitely did. So, should they have made it required? No. And that does kind of bring, I think, some of the fun of that down. But overall, it's a really good collectible. And if you like Skystones, especially, some of the later versions like Overdrive, this is a really fun collectible to have, and it really provides a lot of meaning to the strategy behind that minigame.
It really does.
So, moving on to another game, Skylanders Swap Force, we see a new kind of collectible introduced that we didn't really know what to call it. So we decided to call them Swap Force Mandatory Collectibles. Ditto, why don't you describe these a little bit?
Now, these Swap Force Mandatory, in air quotes, collectibles are kind of just things strewn about each level in Swap Force that are required to be collected if you want to get all the level stars, but they don't really serve any overall function. Like in Mount Cloudbreak, you have Flynn's stuff, and in later levels, you would go on to search for rubber duckies, or floaties, or plushies, and there really was no rhyme or reason to it other than it was on this checklist of things you needed to get the level star.
Yeah, so this is another problem of Vicarious Visions padding out Swap Force. But, I think we realized, inherently what one of the major problems with Swap Force was back when we were talking with Portal Master way back in Season 1, was that they have an issue of trying to add in too much stuff to this game. And I think, yet again, these collectibles are a prime example of that, because there is no point to these. They're not doing anything for you. They are just there to add content to the game. And they're pretty frustrating, because it's why do I need to go out on my way to complete this level star to get this thing that is of no use to me whatsoever?
Of no use to anyone whatsoever.
Exactly. We don't get a cutscene where, Flynn thanks us for, saving his stuff.
That would be worth it.
Yeah, there you go. If it had, a little extra, story scroll kind of element to it, then sure, that'd be something, but, it doesn't. They're just there to be able to check them off the list. And so that's yet another reason why Vicarious Visions has some game design issues. Now, one thing that we can say was actually a little bit more interesting than the mandatory collectibles to be able to get that level star, that actually did have some purpose to it and did actually have some actual quality to it, was the bonus mission maps.
Yes, the bonus mission maps unlocked exactly what they say they unlocked. They unlocked a bonus mission, which was kind of similar to a heroic challenge, but not tied to a specific Skylander in any way. It was just tied to this map. So it allowed for that side mode to return in spirit while improving upon it slightly.
Yeah, so I actually think this was a good idea, because you'd get these bonus mission maps by basically completing a swap zone challenge in one of the levels, and that's cool, because you basically complete a minigame to be able to get access to another minigame, pretty much. It was a way to kind of keep that adventure going, and The swap challenges, so long as you play them on easy, they can be somewhat enjoyable sometimes, depending on the challenge. But then, like, once you do complete those, like, the actual end result of getting that bonus mission map is actually well worth it, because I actually really enjoy a lot of the bonus missions from Swap Force. I think they're fun, and as you say, they're a way to kind of continue the heroic challenges in a little bit of a different way. So being able to unlock more content as you go on, as opposed to having that locked behind a particular Skylander, I do really like the bonus mission map idea. I think it's pretty cool. Now, moving on to the next game, Skylanders Trap Team, we actually really only see one collectible introduced, but we're stretching it when we say collectible, but at the same time, it's still checked off on the achievements like it is a collectible.
And that would be the villains. The collectible that makes Trap Team feel almost like a collectathon, except that the story kind of helps it to feel otherwise. Each level in Trap Team tends to consist of 2 to 3 villains that can be trapped, except the DLC levels, which usually only contain 1. And these villains, you collect them in your traps, you can play as them, you can evolve them, but at the end of the day, they get checked off the list as just another collectible. Just one that's a lot more interactive directly than most of the other collectibles that we've discussed so far.
Yeah, so when you look at the villains as characters, they can be a little kind of lackluster in many ways, due to not really having a complex upgrade path, because you just, have the side quests to do, and because they only have like 2 attacks, and typically they're not very exciting. Like, as we've talked about before, there's typically only a couple villains you want to play as once you've managed to play as all of them and get an idea of how they play. But when you start to look at the villains as collectibles, then they start to kind of become a little bit more exciting, actually. Because when it's like, oh, well, look at that. Like, this is like an interactable collectible that is fighting me.
Yes, exactly. It's a collectible that gives you a challenge and benefits you. So I would say the villains are better looked at as collectibles where they're exciting and fun than they are as looked at as characters where they're kind of lackluster and overall lacking.
Yeah. So, honestly, like, when you look at them that way, like, the villains are not too bad as collectibles. But yeah, so it's interesting because they're kind of like this wishy-washy place where it's like Toys for Pop kind of treats them as both collectibles and also as characters. But, we figured we might as well mention them because, yeah, they're basically an interactable collectible.
But that's all that Trap Team gave us in the way of new collectibles.
That is true. Otherwise, it was just basically your story scrolls, your hats, your legendary treasures, your soul gems, all that typical stuff. So Trap Team never really tried to go and do anything new, but I think that's probably because they did in fact view the villains as collectibles. But moving on to the next game, oh wow, we got a whole lot of new collectibles in that one, and that would be Skylanders Superchargers. So the most prominent one is they pretty much introduced a whole brand new currency type, being Gearbits.
Yes, Gearbits were the currency for your vehicles, as gold was the currency for your Skylanders. And there wasn't a whole lot to do with Gearbits. You leveled up your armor and your attack 5 times, and then you were done.
Yeah, like, you couldn't do anything else with them, really, and that's good idea in concept, but at that point, why not just use gold,
Yes, because at that point, we were already running into the issue of characters maxed out on gold, nothing to spend it on. So adding in another type of currency that would also max out rather easily wasn't exactly the best strategy, but that's what they went with, and it was, in fact, a good concept.
Yeah.
But the execution kind of didn't make it that far.
Yeah, if vehicles had their own upgrade paths like the Skylanders did, then I could see the argument for Gearbits.
Oh
but
boy,
here,
that would have been great.
like, that would have given us way more to do, and that would have been really cool. But the thing is like, they didn't, and so because of that, I really think Gearbits are kind of useless. It's not like you could go into the shop and, like, buy things with Gearbits like you could with gold. Like, you had to buy it with gold. So I wish they had done more with that, because otherwise, yeah, I think this was a pretty weak collectible.
They were about as useless once you finished upgrading as our next collectible, Stardust. Stardust allowed for you to increase your Portal Master rank.
Yeah, great idea.
That was a great idea indeed. But once you maxed out your Portal Master rank, Stardust is worthless.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like, once you start getting those, like, treasure chests or something, if you're, like, replaying back through a level and you've already enter one of those random elements where it's like, "Oh boy, what am I gonna get?" Like, there's a good chance that you're gonna get gear bits or you're gonna get Stardust from it. And if you've already upgraded your Portal Master rank, which oddly ends at, like, 75, you think it'd end at, like, 100 or something, but no, apparently not. Presuming you've already done all that stuff and you've played through the game enough to be able to get all that done, yeah, gear bits and Stardust end up being really useless. Or, as we'll talk about with our next collectible, which could also provide you with gear bits or Stardust. Just like the whole system there that they tried to implement with all these new collectibles just didn't feel very well polished. Like, it felt like they were trying to, like, create a whole brand new system that kind of was reminiscent of the gold and treasure chest kind of idea, but they really didn't implement it in a very good way. And Stardust, like, it's cool in that it's able to give you upgrades to your Portal Master rank, and your Portal Master rank allows you to pick different upgrade paths, basically, every time you level up. Yeah, it didn't really work out well at all.
And then our next collectible was a collectible for collecting collectibles, unless you're talking about Ring of Heroes. And that collectible is Wish Stones, which you could toss into the wishing well, and they would give you experience, gold, Stardust, or gear bits.
Yep. So for the most part, they, as I alluded to when talking about Stardust, these were useless. Like, once you get to a certain point in the game and you don't need gear bits and you don't need Stardust anymore, then yeah.
All your Skylanders are maxed out. You don't exactly need experience or gold either.
Yeah, then it's pretty much absolutely useless. Like, the most it could help you with is the XP and gold, but like, once you have upgraded all your Supercharger characters too, then that's it. Like, it's done.
It was a
It's
good
very
concept.
annoying. Yeah, it's a great idea.
And early game, it comes in a lot of handy for leveling up your Skylanders and your vehicles and getting everything going. But late game, it kind of loses its luster and becomes one of those collectibles that's overall just unnecessary and forgettable.
Yeah. So I think there's kind of like two problems here with all these collectibles. One is I feel like the system that they wanted to try to create here didn't work. I think that was a big letdown in that they tried to have all this interactability between gear bits and Stardust and Wish Stones, but because there were only just a few ways to use it, that system didn't really work out. And then I think the other problem with that is that they oversaturated a lot of these. Like, if you go do the racing and you play the racing for just a couple races, you're going to get like 3 or 4 Wish Stones, you're going to get tons of gear bits, and like they put gear bits throughout tons of the levels in mass quantities. And Stardust, like, even that was pretty easy to come by. So I think they really oversaturated the levels with a lot of these things to the point where, like, you were able to collect all this really quickly. If they had made all this stuff a little bit rarer and a little bit harder to find, or had less value maybe when leveling up your vehicles or something, like, that would have helped it a little bit, but I still think they would have needed to do more than even just that as well.
And then lastly, from Superchargers comes my favorite of the collectibles from Superchargers, and that would be the vehicle mods.
Right. Now, these are pretty much, I guess if you want to think of this way, hats for your vehicles. But the difference is that instead of just modifying the appearance by, putting a hat on top of your Skylander, like, this will actually completely physically change the appearance of your vehicle in game, and also give stat increases to the attack or to the handling or various different stats for your vehicle. And this is actually pretty clever.
I really enjoyed this one and how it was implemented. True, once you collect them all, there's nothing left to it, but it's still constantly there, constantly in play. It never stops being useful because you can always just go ahead and change your stats.
Yeah, the only thing that I don't really like about the vehicle mods is once you've collected all of them, the mod boxes or whatever you want to call them, they're still there on the track, and they give you gear bits, which are also useless. So I would have preferred them to just be like, all right, once all the vehicle mods have been distributed, despawn these, because it also plays out a cutscene too whenever you run into one, and it's like, oh boy, what's it gonna give me? Oh, it's giving me more gear bits. What a surprise!
So for players like me who are
annoying.
speedrunning, you actively have to plan where those toolboxes are and try to avoid them because it's a slowdown on your time.
Like, that part of them I don't like. pretty much at all. But yeah, as for the actual vehicle mods themselves, they're cool. They do a lot, really, and it's fun. Like, and it also gives you a way to trick out your vehicle in a way that might be different from the way that someone else, like one of your friends, might trick out their vehicle. So it's actually really cool. And also, it allows you to customize your stats. Like, for instance, if you're someone that, really cares about handling, it'll allow you to really boost out that handling on your vehicle. Meanwhile, if you're someone that cares more so about just like hardcore damage and bring in the damage, then you'd be able to try to focus on that too. So there's kind of something for everyone there.
Absolutely.
So, moving on to the final game, Skylanders Imaginators, we do actually have a couple more collectibles introduced. And the biggest one, the one that absolutely is the most prominent in this game due to the character creator, is Imaginite.
Imaginite is usually found in Imaginite chests, and they are the pieces that allow you to build your Imaginator however you want it to be.
Yes, absolutely. So here, basically, we see hats pretty much get turned into Imaginite here. You can get hats to create your Imaginators in the Imaginite, so hats kind of get re-implemented into the system. But that's not all. Like, you can get new eyes, you can get new torsos, you can get new legs, you can get new tails, you can get pretty much anything you can think of out of these Imaginite chests. So there's tons of variety. Like, there's literally like hundreds upon hundreds of parts that you could possibly get from these chests. There's also the whole system of rarity as well, which adds on a little bit more variation, where, like, you might be trying to continue to want to fish for rarer and rarer equipment, or for rare, heads or whatever, or torsos, whatever it might be. And the thing is like, while I find that really annoying in TCGs, I actually think that's really good in Imaginators, because that encourages you to keep playing more and keep trying to find more Imaginite chests. And since they're free, unless you go to buy the Imaginite chests on the eShop or on whatever shop it is for your system, like, unless you're going and doing that, which there really isn't that much of a need to do anyway, because they're pretty plentiful, it still encourages you to go out and explore all the levels in the games to keep trying to find more stuff, to keep finding rare gear and keep upgrading.
Absolutely.
So I do like that. And there's also a good variety of ways that you can collect these too. Like, there's the rail grind challenges, there's the egg rescue minigames, there's the snail chase things that you have to do. Like, it's not just like all the time where you just happen to find an Imaginite chest lying around. There's actually some minigames that are tied to it as well. So I also really enjoy that. Now, the only thing that I really don't like about Imaginite is I think that it does kind of have the same issues that Gearbits and Stardust do, but it's not as pronounced. But the thing is, because of Imaginite, a lot of the old collectibles from previous games kind of got taken over, because the Imaginite does come in chests. So the only kind of chests that you really do find in Imaginators, yes, there are still like regular chests, but it really feels like the main like treasure chest kind of collectible is the Imaginite. And so it really does kind of feel like, in many ways, the game got maybe a little too oversaturated when it came to Imaginite. So, like, that is one thing that annoys me. And granted, it does allow for replayability, but it does still kind of feel like there's just, like, it feels like, oh, what's the collectible I'm going to get this time? Oh, it's Imaginite. And yeah, well, it's going to give you something completely different every time, unless you've collected everything. In which case it gives you boosted stats, which that's great. It's cool that it gives you boosted stats if you found everything. But presuming you haven't collected anything, you still know that most likely, no matter what, if you're doing like a snail minigame thing and you're chasing after the snail, there's no way that it's ever going to give you a soul gem for that. Like, it's always going to be an Imaginite chest. And that's something that I don't particularly like about it, that I wish had a little bit more variety. Is it's like, no matter what, if you do an egg rescue minigame, it's not like they're going to give you a Luckatron wheel or something. And because of that, it kind of feels a little oversaturated at times.
Now, well, a lot of collectibles did get removed to expand on the discoverability of the Imaginite. One collectible made a return here in a new form, and that would be the Legendary Treasure, but instead it made its return as the Legendary Selfie Frame.
Yeah, so this one's interesting because it basically is the, like, boring version of the Legendary Treasure that we don't like. In that, basically, throughout all the levels, there are 10 different selfie frames hidden for the 10 different battle classes, and it basically just modifies the selfies that you have framed in the Academy. It just gives them like a nicer, bigger, more exciting frame.
It also gives your Imaginators of that battle class a slight boost.
Yeah, and it gives them a slight boost too, which is also kind of useless because the Imaginators are already overpowered anyway. So it just makes them more overpowered than they already were, so it's not really that great. So overall, like, it's cool that the legendary treasures are back, but they're not nearly as exciting as they were in, say, like, Swap Force.
And speaking of unexciting, we come to our last collectible, which is the Troll Radio.
Yeah, so this is another thing that's returning from a previous game, that being Skylanders Trap Team. But in Trap Team, the Troll Radio would just, play some music. If you shuffled through it enough times, it'd give you a cash prize, and it'd just be like a little bit of gold. It wasn't really anything too exciting, but here they actually turned it into a mini game where you have to stop the spinning dial on the front of the radio in order to be able to unlock voice clips for your Imaginators, which was actually really interesting because that's a way to get pieces for your Imaginator, basically, in a way that wasn't Imaginite. So actually, I kind of like the Troll Radio. I like what they did to it compared to the way it was in Trap Team, but I also kind of like it here just because it gave you at least a little bit something different that wasn't strictly Imaginite. But yeah, I can't agree with your initial impression of boring, though, because it is pretty simple. It kind of reminds me of the challenge from Time Town where you have to time the thing to be able to break the pipes in order to keep progressing. It kind of has a very similar feel of that to me. And so I don't know, I feel like I really only like the Troll Radio as much as I do in Imaginators because it's just something that isn't Imaginite. It's just something else to do. And so I like it for that, but the game of it itself is just mediocre. It's okay, but it does give you something else to do. So now that we've talked about all the different collectibles that are possible to collect in Skylands, it's time for us to go get a different kind of collectible, the Skylanders themselves. It's time for a legendary treasure hunt.
So seeing as how it is Christmas, we had to do some shopping, had to get a little something for ourselves as well. So we have gone on a legendary treasure hunt, which is the segment where we try to find the best bargain on Skylanders that we possibly can within a challenge. The challenge for this holiday episode was to find the most Skylanders of a single element in a lot with a maximum price of $35, and how we are going to score the lots today is 1 point for every Skylander of a single element. That means if one of us has a lot of 20 Skylanders and 6 of them are fire and the rest are mixed elements, we only count the fire ones. So 1 point for every Skylander of a single element, 1/2 point for every $5 under the maximum limit we came in, minus 1/2 point for every Shroom Boom, and I, being the host of this segment this time, have the ability to award 1 extra special bonus point for whatever I see fit. So, Inklander, why don't you tell me what you found doing your holiday shopping?
Yes, absolutely. So I found my lot on eBay, and it consists of 10, and just all of them are the same element, so it's 10 life element Skylanders. And that consists of Bushwhack, Zulu, Jolly Bumbleblast, very fitting for the episode, Tough Luck, Stump Smash Series 1, Stump Smash Series 2, and then Stealth Elf Series 1, Stealth Elf Series 2, Ninja Stealth Elf, and Legendary Stealth Elf as well. A lot of Stealth Elves there, so it is 10 Life Element Skylanders for the low price of $10, so $1 per Skylander.
That's a very nice Life Element lot you got going there, and I like the Jolly Bumbleblast.
Yes, yeah, pretty fitting. Pretty fitting.
Yes, very
I
festive.
believe. Yes.
Now, your lot scores at 10 points for 10 Life Skylanders, plus 2.5 points for being $25 under the price limit, bringing your total to a whopping 12.5 points.
Awesome. And the best part about my lot is that it happens to be of the life element and no shroom booms are included.
Actually, yeah, that's pretty impressive. You found a lot of 10 Skylanders without a Shroom Boom?
Yeah.
Pretty impressive here.
Yeah, I guess for some reason this person wasn't trying to give their shroom booms away, which I don't understand that one.
And you know what? In the holiday spirit, I'm going to give you the extra special bonus point for not having a Shroom Boom.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you, Ditto. I appreciate that.
Now, for my lot is a lot of 14 life element as well, Skylanders. I found my lot on Mercari at a total of $27, so a little closer to $2 Skylander, not quite as good a deal. But this lot includes Tough Luck, Bushwhack, Stealth Elf, Ninja Stealth Elf, Camo, Tree Rex, Stump Smash, Shroom Boom, Zook, Food Fight, Zulu, Jolly Bumble Blast, Grilladrilla, and Stink Bomb. So a little more variety in the way of life Skylanders. Sadly, I do have a Shroom Boom in there, but I have a few fewer Stealth Elf, and I have a couple characters here that I don't see as often, like Zulu and Camo.
Very true.
So my lot is going to score 14 points for 14 life element Skylanders, minus a half a point for that Shroom Boom, plus half a point for being $5 under the maximum price limit, bringing my total up to 14 points.
All right, nice.
Yes. Wow, these scores were really, really close, but I'm going to have to say that I do take this by a half point.
Well, good game, Ditto.
Good game, Inklander. This was really, really close. You found a really good deal.
Yeah, so did you. And I mean, it's funny, we both ended up picking the life element here.
Right, what a coincidence.
Yeah, we could have gone with anything, but I don't know. I guess people are eager to get rid of their life element characters for some reason.
I mean, it could be the sheer number of Stealth Elves and Shroom Booms, although I really can't say too much negatively about Stealth Elf. She's a great character.
That is true.
Just the number of repos is just kind of like Gilgrunt.
Yep, that's a little crazy. But, you know, we can't say the same thing for Shroom Boom, though.
Nope. But this challenge does go to show during these holiday times that you can find the deal that you're looking for on Skylanders. You just gotta be patient and do a little searching.
Absolutely.
Now, with our Skylanders in hand, it's time to head over to the Dread Yacht, which is decked out in Christmas lights, because we are going to have a nice holiday meal with Flynn and the others.
So we've boarded the Dread Yacht, and of course, before we can properly have our feast, we've decided to go ahead and take the Dread Yacht over to Glacier Gully to be able to join Noodles and the rest of the Cyclopses for a nice Christmas dinner, because of course, it's Christmas for bad guys too. So we couldn't exclude them. So we've decided for this tour to take a look at the level Glacier Gully from Skylanders Giants.
Glacier Gully is the more winter-themed level in Skylanders Giants, and it features a lot of what feels like platforming, but isn't, and a lot of skating.
Oh yeah, that's the most glaring negative about about this level, isn't it? Is the bowl of ice that you have to try to skate around to be able to collect keys and to be able to get to some of the secret areas where, you know, you have some of the collectibles hidden, like treasure chests and things like that. Yeah, so that part's definitely not fun because, I don't know, it feels very much kind of like the spin challenge in a way from Swap Force, because they make the controls a little too loose here.
And I feel like that's the case anytime you're on ice in the Skylanders series. It just feels really, really loose.
Yeah, I would agree. And it's just, yeah, that whole part of the level, which is pretty much like the tail end of the level, is, yeah, that part's not fun. I think there's some pretty good battle gates here. Like, I think some of the enemy fights are fun. Like, having to deal with the executioners, I think, adds a pretty decent amount of challenge. Granted, you know, that is on easy. If you're having to do it on, like, Nightmare, the executioners will take you out in, like, one hit. But when you're doing it on like easier mode, I think they had a pretty decent amount of challenge. I prefer them way more than the bark demons that we talked about in the last episode. I think the battle arenas are good. I really like what they do with the light puzzles here, and that you have to use those to be able to melt the ice. I really, really like that idea. It's fun, and I like how at the end you kind of have to do a way more complex light beam puzzle to be able to melt the Archean robot at the end. And I don't know, I think they did do a pretty good job with a lot of stuff in this level, in that even some of the collectibles like the Luckatron Wheel are hidden within these building kind of structures that you have to pretty much plan in advance to be able to bomb them, because once you jump off of a certain platform, because there's no jumping in this game, you can't go back up, so you kind of have to see in the distance that there's that building that you have to blow up to be able to get that collectible and attack it there by throwing the bomb before being able to actually get to the platform. So there's actually some pretty tricky stuff when it comes to getting the collectibles in this level, which I actually enjoy because they do that a couple times. I think there's 2 buildings you kind of have to blow up to be able to get collectibles for. I think the overall design of the puzzles, I think, in this level were pretty good, and I really do like the enemy fights, but overall, yeah, once you get that ice bowl part, that's not good. That's not fun.
I really like the enemies in this level. The Cyclops are a lot of fun to fight. There are some icy looking chompies. Those are kind of cool too. I've always been a fan of the chompies. Every variation, even the ones that really do a lot more damage than they should. So the enemies here are fun, but this level does have its shortcomings as well. And I will agree, the puzzles for the most part are pretty fun as well.
Yeah, it's just really the tail end of this level that really feels like it just slips up, pun intended. It definitely has its downfalls, and it's not great towards the end, but overall, all the stuff I think leading up to it with the ice blocks and everything, that's not too bad. That's actually pretty enjoyable. But yeah, once you're on the ice, that's not the enjoyable part of the level by any means. Well, we've managed to melt the Archean robot there to be able to help out the Machine Ghost. And it seems like Noodles and the rest of the Cyclopses have been able to get to the Dread Yacht to be able to join us for some Christmas dinner. So we're going to go ahead and sit down and enjoy that before we head on off to the Archean Arena.
And now, with our bellies full and our goodbyes said to the Cyclopses, we decide to stop off at the Archean Arena to get a little bit of exercise. Now, Inklander, who have you brought to the arena to champion for you today?
Well, Ditto, for this holiday episode, I figured it'd be good to bring a cooler Skylander, since it is Christmas time after all. So I have brought Legendary Slam Bam to the Archean Arena for this episode.
All right, Legendary Slam Bam. That's a very, very interesting choice. And yet, very fitting for the holiday. I like it. So tell me a little bit about your Legendary Slam Bam.
Right, so Legendary Slam Bam is a water Skylander of the melee kind of battle type. And he has a health of 930, critical hit of 66, armor of 43, speed of 32, and luck of 32. His primary attack is Yeti Fists, which deals 55 damage and is him just swinging his arms back and forth. His attack 2 is Ice Prison, which will basically shoot forth a block of ice and potentially freeze an enemy inside it, and that deals 51 damage. And his tertiary attack is Yeti Ice Shoe Slide, which allows him to basically glide on the ground either on ice or, with later upgrades, a snowboard for 0 damage, at least primarily without any upgrades. His top path is Blizzard Brawler, where attack 1 gains combos and increased damage, and he also gets improved armor. Meanwhile, his bottom path is Glacier Hit, where attack 2 gains range, duration, and deals damage.
Legendary Slam Bam is a very fun character overall. He's quick, he's powerful, he dishes out the hurt, and it's just a lot of fun. And that snowboard, while it, to me, kind of actually looks a little bit more like a sled at times, is definitely a nice little asset to have, too.
Yeah. It's a speed boost more than it is, a concern about dealing damage, though.
Yes. So you've made a really, really interesting choice here, and I think this battle's actually going to be really fun. So the Skylander that I have chosen to champion for me today is none other than Rubble Rouser,
Oh, interesting.
who is a melee Earth Element Skylander with a maximum health at level 20 of 965, critical hit 59, armor 43, speed 32, and luck 26. His attack 1 is Hammer Swing, which swings his hammer around and can be charged up to deal even more damage. Each hit deals 108 points of damage, 135 if charged. His attack 2 is called Deep Dig, which quickly digs and then comes out of the ground, damaging nearby enemies, which deals initially 80 damage, 22 damage residually a couple of times while the ground is shaking, and 103 for a finisher. And his attack 3 is Tools of the Trade, which is a smashing attack with the hammer that deals 135 points of damage, with a shockwave that does 33. In the way of upgrade paths, his top paths are Drill Pitcher and Boulder Boulders, which allows for attack 1 to gain charge and increase damage, and attack 2 causes boulders to fly out of the ground, dealing increased damage as well. His bottom path is known as Excavator and Miner Foreman, which allows for attack 3 to cause rock shards to fly out of the ground and deal increased damage, and calls out more miners with increased damage.
Yeah, so Rubble Rouser's definitely surprising, especially for our Christmas episode here. But he also definitely packs a punch with a lot of his attacks, so this is actually pretty concerning.
Yeah, so when I chose him, I wasn't exactly thinking of the holiday theming. I was just trying to think of which Skylander I feel like it would be fun to play as today.
Okay.
And I realized that it's been a while since I used Rubble Rouser, so I figured why not toss him into the arena before I boot up the Wii U and send him back in.
Yes. Alright, well that definitely makes sense. So, we're both melee, so that's going to certainly make for some interesting strategy here, because I need to keep away from your attacks, like all of them.
Definitely. I mean, and stat-wise, well, Rubble Rouser has a little bit more health. Slam Bam does have a slightly higher critical hit and luck, where our armor and speed is the same. So, yeah, not getting hit by my attacks would probably be ideal for you.
Yeah, I would agree there. And so what I'm really going to try to do is actually focus on the bottom path for Slam Bam to be able to really focus on that Ice Prison attack and be able to make sure that that works. Because what I'd want to do is try to kind of keep you at a distance and hopefully manage to hit you with that Ice Prison a couple times. And depending on, how long that lasts, how long it takes you to get out of that, maybe, go over and hit you a couple times and be able to deal out that damage with the Yeti Fists. So that'd kind of be my strategy, is to, potentially skate away using my tertiary attack, keep trying to use that Ice Prison until it hits, and then basically, glide on over to you, hit you a couple times with the Yeti Fists, and then glide away, and then try to keep using the Ice Prison until that hits again, and keep repeating that cycle over and over again. That would be my goal, to be able to try to play this out at Slam Bam.
Whereas with Rubble Rouser, my objective, I would definitely focus on those top paths, because increased damage on attack 1 and attack 2, plus the extra boulders flying out of the ground if I were to dig. And I would probably try to use that attack 2, that dig deeper, to dodge some of your Ice Prisons and get some free easy hits on you, and then when I come up, just start wailing on you with the hammer.
Yeah, that would make sense. That strategy would also probably be able to deal a lot of damage too, but I think the thing is really, I honestly think that this fight could depend on the amount of times I'm able to get Ice Prison to hit.
And how long it lasts, yes.
Yeah.
This matchup is going to be very, very situational, honestly speaking. It could go either way, because stats-wise, we're fairly even. Attack damage-wise,
Rubble Rouser.
Rubble Rouser wins this every time.
Yeah.
In a face-to-face slugfest. But when you take into consideration the added effects of each of these abilities and how situational everything could be, the timing on the digging, the timing and the aim of the ice prisons, how long the ice prisons last if and when they do hit, all of that is just so situational that honestly, it's gonna be really hard to call this.
Yeah, like I think Slam Bam does have a really good chance of taking this if he's able to get Ice Prison to hit most every time. But the thing is,
Right.
if he can't, and if Rubble Rouser manages to get off that secondary ability a couple times, then like it's definitely going to be Rubble Rouser. So it is definitely very situational, but I don't know if I'd quite call it even. Like I definitely think that Slam Bam's probably going to be losing this maybe 1 or 2 times more than I think Rubble Rouser would be, but you know, it's definitely really close.
Really, really close. I don't think we could do it out of 10 for this one.
Yeah, I would agree there.
No ifs, ands, or buts about it. This is extremely situational. I can't even say it's going to come down to Portal Master experience or timing, or it's all extremely situational. And this is probably the toughest call we've had yet in the Archean arena.
Yeah, I can definitely say
But
that.
I'm going to say that Rubble Rouser takes this 51 times out of 100. If the Ice Prison misses more than once, I think Rubble Rouser takes it.
Yeah.
If the Ice Prison misses 1 time or fewer, then it goes to Slam Bam.
Yeah, like that's the thing.
And as the dust clears from the arena, we sense a little bit of motion as Brock, who we hadn't noticed until now, stands up from his throne and approaches us, holding a Christmas present.
Brock hands us the Christmas present, and we open it up, and out comes a Cyclops Brawl Buckler, an enemy from Skylanders Swap Force. And Ditto and I look at each other pretty shocked, and we look over at Brock, and he just says, "What do you want? A congratulatory muffin basket?" So, for this episode of Brock's Baddies, we're going to be talking about the Cyclops Brawl Buckler. So this is a pretty interesting enemy in that it actually shares an attack pattern with a couple other enemies from Swap Force, like the Archean Slam Shocks, in which basically it is shielded for most of the time, but then it gears up to attack, kind of jumps forward and slams to the ground with its mace. And that's kind of the opening window there to be able to attack them. So Ditto, what are your thoughts on the Cyclops Brawl Buckler?
I really like the design of this particular Cyclops. He's wearing this helmet that has 3 horns coming off of it, which is kind of an awkward number in my opinion, but it really works for the character design. His shield's covered in spikes. He's got this belt buckle across the front of his outfit. That's kind of really, really cool to see that they paid that much attention to the detail.
Yeah, he's a pretty menacing looking Cyclops.
Right? And the fact that his eye is like a pinkish tint, that's really, really menacing, honestly. And well, I tend to not like enemies that are like spinners or whatnot, that are basically I can't just attack them freely. I have to wait until their guard is down. This style of enemy, well, they can be very, very annoying to deal with based on that timing. There's also a little bit of fun to that as well, because I don't know, there's something about learning the exact timing that shield goes down and your attack hits it, even before its attack has even gone off. That's, I don't know, I find that entertaining. So I find this enemy to be kind of fun to fight, while at the same time obnoxious. And his design is just really super cool.
Yeah, so, I definitely agree there. Like, I'm not really a big fan whenever an enemy has a shield. I find it really annoying. But here, this one's not, like, the most egregious when it comes to having the shield.
Right, it's not a spinner.
Yeah, like, the spinning ones are the most annoying. But here, yeah, they're a good design. They're not, like, that annoying. Like, with these, it's not like you don't even really have to worry about dodging that much, honestly. Like, you just have to make sure, like, once they start gearing up for that attack to slam down to the ground, you just move out of the way. Yeah, you just move out of the way and attack them. Yeah, it's not bad.
And they attack frequently enough that the shield is only a minor inconvenience.
Yes.
As opposed to a spinner where it's terrible.
Yes, absolutely.
So while they might be a little bit obnoxious because they do have that shield, it's not as bad as it could be.
Yeah, I would agree. So it's not like too much. Like, it is very easy to get out of the way, dodge, hit them, that's it. And also, their design's pretty awesome. Like, compared to some of the other Cyclops designs, like, these guys look cool. Like, it would have been cool to have a Skylander that looks like this.
Right? Why didn't we get a Cyclops Skylander? That would have been really cool.
Yeah, that would have been cool. Absolutely. Like, we get some one-eyed Skylanders, but they aren't really in the same style of the rest of the Cyclopses that we see throughout Skylanders. Like, we have Diveclops, right? But, like, he doesn't look really anything at all like one of the Cyclopses from, like, Giants or Swap Force. So it would have been really, really cool to get a, like, Cyclops-looking Skylander that looks like this. Like, that would have been fun.
Yeah, it would have. That's a great design.
So, Ditto, if you had to rank the Cyclops Brawl Buckler on a scale of 1 to 7, whereabout would you put the Cyclops Brawl Buckler in that range?
I think I would give him a 6.
Oh, really? Interesting. And why exactly is that? What makes you like him that much?
His design is really, really cool, and he's not that much of a pain to fight. Like, I don't mind seeing these show up on the battlefield.
Gotcha.
So, while they can be slightly obnoxious, that would be what's preventing it from having that perfect score. While they can be slightly obnoxious, they're not really all that obnoxious. As long as you're not playing in Nightmare mode, these are a footnote. But they're a footnote that looks super cool.
Gotcha. So for you, it's primarily based more so around their design.
The design, and the fact that it doesn't pain me to see it show up. Unlike the Bark Demon we discussed last time, where you see it show up and that just kills the entire experience.
Yeah, understandable. So, for me, though, I kind of have to give them a 4. I just think they're kind of mid-tier there, so they're not exactly good, they're not exactly bad. Like, for me, as you say, like, they're just kind of like a blip. Like, it's just like, okay, yeah, they're there. Like, the thing is like, the shield attack does kind of annoy me enough to where it could pull it into the negative. But the fact that they're pretty easy to avoid and also their design's really cool would put it in the positive. So for me, they kind of just balance out enough to where, for me, I'd just kind of put the Brawl Buckler right exactly in the middle at 4. So that means with your 6 and my 4, our average rating and the overall rating for the Cyclops Brawl Buckler is going to be a 5 out of 7. So actually, not a bad score. It puts it a little bit into the positive there.
Yes, it does. Brock's baddie's rating of 5. Not bad at all.
Yeah, and Brock seems to be kind of happy that we ended up liking his Christmas present here.
Seriously, who puts an enemy in a box, though, and gifts it to somebody? What?
Only Brock.
Now, before I throw this back to Chill Bill, I would also like to extend a massive thank you to Inklander for being a part of the show and being my co-host since the show premiered.
Yeah, it's been great fun, Ditto. It's been an absolute pleasure getting to start the show with you and getting to do the past 2 seasons. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what you and the new co-host do for Season 3.
Take it away, Chill Bill.
That concludes this episode of Skylanders Portalcasters. You'll find the website and links to the hosts' individual channels in the description. Follow the Skylanders Portalcasters Twitter for regular updates about this podcast. And join Discord server for Skylanders discussion. Until next time, this is Chill Bill with K-Trolls signing off.
Bye.
So, Ditto, what are your thoughts on the Cyclops Brawl Buckler?
Well, first off, that's not a mace, that's a Morning Star.
A Morning Star?
Yeah. If it's round with points on it, like what Whamshell has, it's actually a Morning Star.
Interesting. Well, according to the wiki, it says mace.
I know. They also call Whamshells a mace. It's not.
Okay. Well, hey, even Whamshell calls this thing a mace.
Right. But it's not.
We'll ignore that for the for the sake of the episode.